Story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, you won't just start all the reading. I just can't wait to be hearing.
Good morning and welcome to Story Time. Thank you for joining me. Happy Wednesday wherever you're joining us from today. I'm so glad you're here for this story that we have for you, and of course our wonderful guest that is joining us today, Muon Thi. Good morning to you and welcome. Please, as always, let me know where you're joining us from and who is joining in with you. It is always a pleasure to be here with you on Story Time, sharing wonderful stories, rich stories, definitely enriching stories, and we get to learn more about the creators behind these amazing books. Thank you for being here, and thank you taking the time to be here with us, the little ones and of course the adults, for setting up your children so they are ready to enjoy wonderful stories. And today we will be reading Wishes, and this one is the latest book from Muon Thi, and of course she's done many amazing books that have also been part of the Storytime family, and it is illustrated by VICTO, and we'll be learning more about that very shortly when Muon Thi joins us. Good morning to you and welcome. We have wishes today. What are your wishes? What do you wish for? So join in and find out what this one is all about. Get comfortable, get everything you need to enjoy this beautiful story. Your cold drink, your hot drink, whatever is your due, bring it along. Thank you so much for joining in. Good morning to you and welcome to Story Time. It is good evening to you if you're out in Lusaka, Zambia. Good morning to you if you're out here in Auckland like myself, and of course good afternoon if you're in London or somewhere else in the world. Thank you so much for joining in. Always appreciate you. And please remember too that request these books from your local library. Find them at your local library. Give them to your teachers so they can read them and we can get to learn all the important things that are addressed in them. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning to you. Amanda, how are you doing today? Sarah and Nathan out in Illinois, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. And you're saying it is sunny in Illinois. Well, thank you so much. As I say always, you bring the sunshine to Story Time. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning to you, Sarah and Nathan, and of course Amanda. And I hope you're looking forward to receiving your book from yesterday's reading. Absolutely loving it. Good morning to you. Good morning to you also in Illinois, but this time in Chicago. How are you doing, Ellen Edwards? Yes, indeed. Good morning to you and welcome. Always a pleasure having you here on Storytime with us, Ellen. Sunny Chicago. Enjoy it. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning to you, Amanda Waldman Vandermeer. How are you doing today out in Seattle? And of course with baby Bia. Oh my goodness. Nate, Grandma Cindy, Grandpa Dennis. Good morning to you and welcome to Storytime. Thank you for joining in. I love it that the entire crew is here today for Storytime. And of course, a big hug to Marlin as well. Good morning to you and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on Storytime. Yay! Danny Rodriguez, Isabella, Luis, and Leslie, good morning to to you. How are you doing right here in Oakland? Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the lovely sun that is out here in Oakland today. Enjoy it, and I hope you get some time outside. But for now, we have a great story that we'll be reading, so stay tuned for that one. Good morning to you. Absolutely love it. Jonathan, how are you doing? Yes, indeed, out in Lusaka, Zambia. Thank you so much for joining us. Jonathan Senior, Salim Pande, Chanda, Pearl, Mapalo, and Daisy. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us out in Lusaka. I hope you're having fun. Yes, my hometown. Thank you so much for joining in. Good morning to you. Kerry Falau and Lomani Lee, I have missed you. How are you doing? And also, you're joining in with Josefa today. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining in. The entire family is here for story time. I love it. I love it. My own wishes are coming true. Families coming together, reading books together. Love it. Out in Sacramento, how are you doing today? Lomani Lee, Kerry, and Josefa, how are you? Oh, I have missed you so much. Thank you for coming back. Good to see you here. I hope you've had a lovely time, whatever you have been doing. Thank you for being here. And I'm sad that it is smoky in Sacramento. I hope that you're able to stay safe. Masks that can help. I don't know what else can help there. Hope filters, air filtration. I hope you have access to all of that. But thank you so much for joining in Story Time. I wish you all the best. And as the smoke clears out, thank you so much for being here on Story Time. Good morning to you, Sharon Lungo. How are you doing? Joining in with Soraya right here in Oakland. Thank you so much for being here. Absolutely love it. Wishes. We are reading this one today. It is written by Muon Thi and illustrated by VICTO, and we will be finding out about this one very shortly. So at this point, please join me in welcoming our author for today, our guest for today, the amazing Muon Thi to Story Time. Welcome.
Hi everyone. Hi Peter.
How are you?
Good to be here. Yeah, I'm great. My morning just started. I live, pretty close to Oakland in Berkeley.
Yeah, no, right in the neighborhood. Good to see you. And I feel like this has been 5 years in the making.
Yes, since I first stepped into your classroom to read
so
in the Village by the Sea.
Yeah. Muon Thi came into my classroom. I think that was my first year at Emerson. Brought us our very first book too, which was In a Village by the Sea. And so love it, treasure this copy, and good to see you. Here we are 5 years later.
Yeah. Well, glad to be reconnecting, and I appreciate that you still have the book.
Yeah, no. So Muon, I know you mentioned you're joining us from close to Oakland. How is it? Where are you joining us from today? And what do you like to do away from writing and reading books?
Well, let's see. So I'm joining from Berkeley, California, which I think, we're just maybe 5 to 10 miles apart, I'm guessing. Yeah. I just went into Oakland like last week to actually do an audio recording of wishes. And let's see, nice. What do I like to do? I like to go on walks, but I do have 3 kids and the youngest is 1. So a lot of my time is actually just spent taking care of the youngest right now. Yeah. And so actually it's like a real privilege to be able to read and write when I get to do it. Yeah. That's what I do for fun. I also like to cook. Play board games. One of my friends recently just released a game that he designed, and it's called Dice Miner. So it's actually a very fun game, and it's like easy to learn. It's just involve dice, and you sort of collect dice and try to find the best ones and block the opponents.
Yeah, I love, for board games, I love Scrabble.
Do you?
Yeah, nice. Scrabble is definitely, and then checkers. Chess, I will get by. I can name the pieces. That's probably as far as I would go. But then Settlers of Catan is also another good one for me. Yeah.
Catan is a huge favorite in this family. Yes, that's probably our favorite go-to game. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. But you have a new book.
Yes.
And you're reading this one for us today.
Yes.
I'm excited. Okay. And I want to hear more about it afterwards. But this time I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
To read our book for today, Wishes. Yes.
All right.
All right. All yours.
Wishes. Let's see. By Muon Thi, illustrations by VICTO. And this is published by Scholastic. Wishes. The night wished it was quieter. The bag wished it was deeper. Why do you think the bag was wishing that? What's in it? The light wished it was brighter. The dream wished it was longer. Have you ever had a dream that you wished was longer? What kind of dream was it? Was it a good one or a bad one or something in between? The clock wished it was slower. What do you think this family is feeling? The path wished it was shorter. Have you ever been on a walk or some other journey that you wished was shorter? The boat wished it was bigger. The sea wished it was calmer. How do you think the passengers on the boat are feeling? The sun wished it was cooler. What's the longest amount of time that you've been out in the sun without any shade or covering of some kind? The heart wished it was stronger. The home wished it was closer. Have you ever had that wish that your home was closer? And I wished. I didn't have to wish. Any more. So this story is inspired by my family's own experience as refugees. And when I was a baby, I left Vietnam on a boat with my mom and my dad and three of my siblings and several of my cousins and my aunts and uncles. And we did a very similar journey all the way to Hong Kong. And this is a story that's just told again and again. So I want to just show a little bit of the art underneath the book jacket so that you can see that this story is, it's based on my family's story, but it's also a universal story.
Yeah, I saw that. It's just stunning.
Yeah. So
Oh, thank you, Mon. It's such a powerful book, such a lovely book. Why wishes?
Why? This is like my seventh book, but this really is the story that compelled me to write. Like, this is a story that I wanted to write when I started out writing. And it's a hard story to tell.
Mm,
I wanted to tell it well. I wanted to do it justice. It's, it's autobiographical. And um, I found a hard time trying to find the right way to write it and what
right.
to say in it. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I finally figured out this is one possible way to tell it that
Mm.
I felt was a good way to tell it.
Yeah. So had you had drafts of it back then, or was it just all still in your head?
It, it's like this is a story that I've lived, and also I grew up in a very close-knit community of refugees in the US. And so
Mm,
I knew a lot of people who were refugees, and it really shaped my understanding of the world. And so, like, since I was like a teenager, I thought, like, this is an important story to tell.
right,
And
right.
and back then, not it wasn't being told that often.
Mm,
And I didn't really have a way to express it that I felt good about. I thought maybe I'd write it as like a short story or a novel.
yeah.
And I never actually tried to write about this specific part of the journey. And but then it just kind of, it was like just at the back of my mind, but I didn't really put it down into words.
Yeah.
I know you have the little tree there, so the little tree sort of touches upon the same story.
Yes.
It's told, more as a fable,
Right.
and it's only through the author's note that you can see the connection
Hmm.
with my own personal background. So this is like a story that I did try to write. I mean, I did try to write about my experiences with the little tree, but since it was so indirect in that story,
Mm,
I think readers just couldn't get the same sort of connection that they can with
connection.
wishes.
Yeah. And
Just that one's about trees.
yeah, no, I see those connections in all your stories. You do kind of, it touches on that a little bit, and I see that family is central to you too. I'll be coming to that as well. And then when I was reading, I went back several times this time to In a Village by the Sea, and
Hmm.
it felt like this was almost like, it is the first book, but it also felt like somehow directly linked to wishes.
You figured it out. Yeah, I thought that this could be a sequel to In a Village by the Sea, and not
It
many.
definitely
I
feels
don't
like
think I've
it.
met anyone who like kind of just deduced it of their own accord. Usually, I'm like, I think this could be, and
Yeah.
and I don't know if maybe for the viewers who don't know In a Village by the Sea, maybe you could read it later, but
Right. Yes.
you
No,
know,
for sure. Yeah.
it may not be obvious, and that is just the nature of events. Like, so
Mm.
one moment you can have, you know, a more safe, story, and then the next moment, the with turn of events, suddenly now a family's forced to flee.
Yeah.
But yes,
Right.
I do I do consider that like the prequel.
Yeah. No, it
Just
definitely. Like I think I am interested in them, and so, and then also having known it for a while and read it several times, I think that connection kind of came a little easy. I was like, oh yeah, this
Mhm.
definitely feels that connection. And then too, when you read the back matter that you put on it, I think that also helps tying in
Mhm.
that. So you mentioned, like, you know, you wanted to write this and put it out there. How many books can we find out there that teach your particular Asian culture, or your, Vietnamese culture? Like, and how are you doing that? How are you passing that on to your own kids? You mentioned you have a 1-year-old
Mhm.
now. So like, how are
Yeah,
you passing it on to them?
and I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best way to pass it on, specifically for me, I think, is through the language, because I think
Mm,
language is so integral to culture.
yeah.
And my parents, my dad, is no longer with us, but like my mom is still around. But both of my parents only spoke Vietnamese, and so to me, language and family and culture were sort of inseparable. And but it's pretty hard because I'm the only one who speaks Vietnamese fluently, or even has a basic knowledge of it in my family, like in my new nuclear family. So it's like it's a little hard to pass it on when you're only communicating with one other person. So but I've been trying to use language. So my children know a little bit of Vietnamese. Now I know they don't feel comfortable speaking it, but they do know a little bit. And I'm working harder with the 1-year-old because I don't like to pressure my children to do things. But I think with a 1-year-old, I'm going to pressure her to speak back to me in Vietnamese, because that's if someone doesn't feel comfortable speaking back, then you're kind of limited in terms of language skills.
Right. Are there any Vietnamese schools or anything? Because I hear a lot of like Japanese school.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there are any Vietnamese schools or anything like that.
Well, we're fortunate because there is like a large Vietnamese community in many parts of California, including Oakland. So there's an Oakland Vietnamese school, and my kids did it online during the pandemic for almost the whole session. But I think just the fact that it was online and they didn't really know any of the students in person previously, it wasn't as effective. And the other thing is that I speak with a different dialect. It's actually the least popular one out of the 3 major dialects in Vietnam.
And what region is that from?
Central Vietnam, near Hue.
You mentioned that in the first video,
So you'll see that the northern and the southern ones are the ones that are commonly taught. And it's also the ones that are commonly used in literature. And to me, that's kind of like trying to teach my kids British English when I speak with an American accent, So it's a little, so that kind of complicates things. And so, but in terms of books, probably my favorite book, or one of my favorites, is Inside Out and Back Again. That's a book written in verse, and I just love that book. I didn't get to read it until I was an adult, because I think that's when it came out, when I was an adult already. And but my oldest has read it multiple times, and we have other books so that book is by Thanh Ha Lai, and we have books by T. Bui, who are The Best We Can Do, and also A Different Pond. That's a picture book. And
he's been very big too with the movement. I think for the forming of Auckland International High School, where it's I think it's students who've been in the country 3 months or less, I think, at initial entry. So it's a really good program, and where it allows immigrant students to learn the language, learn the culture, and kind of assimilate really well. But sorry, you're talking further.
Oh no. So those are just like some of the books. There aren't that many books, and then one of a fellow writer, Min Le, he also incorporates aspects of Vietnamese culture in his work, and I think probably in the future my kids will be reading more of those. But there's definitely more stuff in recent years. And like when I was growing up, there was nothing that I could read to connect with. But luckily, I had my community, so I didn't really need the literature as much. But
and then there's a new one too, that Chicken by the Sea by by I hope Viet Thanh Nguyen. This one too. I mean, it doesn't directly talk about Vietnamese culture, but just being written by Vietnamese author, and and then also like just I think that representation that I feel like is much needed in the circles.
Now there are like many types of books written by Vietnamese authors that you can pick from, and it doesn't always have to do with Vietnamese culture.
Right. No, that's so. Have you been back to An Bang? Is it?
Oh, An Bang, my village. No, I haven't. I went back to Vietnam once when I was 28. I left when I was a baby, but I didn't. I wanted to go, but I wanted to visit my village with like a family member, and I wasn't traveling with a family member. And we have certain protocol and customs that we engage in when we see family again. So I felt it was. I haven't visited yet, and I've been trying to get my mom to go back with me for
so
many years. I don't think she'll do it.
Been back since you moved.
My mom?
Yeah.
She went back once. Yes.
Oh, okay.
About 15 years, a little like about 15 years after we moved
Yeah.
here, she went back
Oh,
once, and
yeah.
she says she intends to go back again, but I don't know. It doesn't seem likely. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I know that family for you is, like very central. It seems like your books, I know that this one is dedicated or at least is inspired by your dad.
hmm
You mentioned that. And then Little Tree is your mom. Why
hmm
those attributions, or
hmm
why did you feel that those two had to be,
Yeah.
associated with those two people in your life?
Well, they're like, I think like I think for most of the viewers out there, my parents definitely played a huge part in my life.
Mm.
And I think especially my mom. The Little Tree was actually written before Village, in A Village by the Sea.
Oh,
So the books were published in the reverse order.
yeah.
And, just I think I think I felt like I grew up in a Vietnamese village in America, and I felt like my particular my particular childhood experiences
Mm.
were a little different from what you usually experienced, and I think I just wanted to pay tribute. I think to my mom especially
Yeah.
with this
No,
dedication.
yeah. No, I know personally, like the role that my mom played in my life, it's just amazing. And so when I see dedications like that in my own way, I'm like, oh, that's a dedication to my own mom. It could be my own mom, like I feel like she is was that strong person in my life. And so yeah, definitely I appreciate those. And when I see them, it always gives me an appreciation of where people are coming from with their story.
hmm
And then somebody, Amanda was just mentioning here too. She says, like amazing read aloud, and thank you so much for sharing your personal story. And it's gut wrenching and beautiful. What's your reaction to that?
Hold on one second.
No worries.
Thank you, Amanda. It's it's definitely a personal story.
Yeah, no, and like that's the connection that we make with it. Even when I read it, you see it's like it means a lot. And I know too that one of the things when I see Amanda, it reminds me too that today we're joined by Dennis and Cindy, her children's grandkids, right? And so just wondering too, like grandparents play an important role in like in our lives, in family, in community. So how has that helped you, having your mom close by with your kids? And have you been able to see them during the pandemic?
Well, actually, my mom doesn't. She did live with us for about 8
Mm.
months right
Oh,
before the pandemic started, but she
mm.
lives in Florida and I live in
Oh, wow.
California.
Yeah.
And, um, you know, family and community is very important to us, but
Mm.
since she doesn't speak English, she found it very lonely here because then I was her
Oh,
primary, I was like almost her only relationship, that
mm.
she like where she could communicate directly with someone
Yeah.
else. So so actually, uh, my children's all their grandparents live far away, and I didn't actually get
Mm.
to know any of my grandparents.
Yeah.
I think I met two when I was just a baby, and so I have no recollection of it.
Right. You mentioned,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, but now we actually do have one of the grandmothers in town. My husband's mom is in town, and it is nice to see them connect, and it's nice to when my kids do see my mom.
Yeah.
It's also nice, but it's like it's a complicated relationship because of the language barrier, and most especially I think,
Yeah.
and a little bit by the distance. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
No,
partly by the distance also, or not just
right.
partly, a lot,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that plays a part, but I'm still glad that at least you're still able to have that connection and still able to meet. And just talking about that, like having these two cultures, and
Yeah.
I think Catherine there mentions that when you don't live in a community or kids are not part of two cultures, like how on French-Moroccan connection, these are so important. So I think what you're doing with the books and then also having that community, it seems like you've been able to extend and expose them to things that help them.
I try. Yeah.
And how important is it to continue building those relationships?
I think it's especially important for the person in the middle, So like for me, it's important. And then of course, by the time my kids are, I guess it's important in the sense that it's definitely important, but like they're like the roots, and it's important to know where your roots are, if you can,
right. No, and, that's a whole layer that is there for sure. Like how many can still, if you're able to trace those roots, if you're able to.
No,
and there's
and I guess one thing I would say, like they're very critical in the sense that there is like certain things that you just can't get from the media, including books, including your neighbors, or there are certain things that you can only get from your grandparents,
right?
Or so
No, that's so true. I this past weekend I attended a marriage ceremony in Zambia. I was over Zoom, and it's the first time that my generation, we're growing into that now, like where we'll be the ones facilitating those meetings and so on. Because the person that was actually that is getting married is a niece, a cousin's daughter. And so it was just interesting that now we are at the level where they're like, you will have to start taking over these things from our own uncles and aunts, right?
Yes,
and so
absolutely.
It was interesting to be in that situation where no matter how many books I'd read or what I'd watched, like I wouldn't have learned about some of those little bits that were in there, the way people interacted, the way they talked, the way how some, form of money had to exchange hands or, for us to speak and so on. It was just so interesting. But like you're saying, like there's just certain things that come from doing and learning and being immersed and experiencing that. Yeah.
I guess on the flip side, though, I also have to decide like which traditions I want to pass on and uphold. Because in my specific village culture, it is a little sexist. So I try to not pass on the traditions I don't agree with.
Yeah. And then do you have conversations about those when the kids see those things happening?
Yes, I do. Either. Sometimes you have the discussion after. Sometimes then, sometimes after.
Yeah, true.
It's like, it depends on what's going on.
And I know that, you mentioned the sea. We see that the sea is such an important part of your life. I mean, even at 9 months old, there was already that extra connection of you actually traveling through it and surviving it and, with your family. What does the sea mean to you? What does it represent for you?
I think just so many things and simultaneously perhaps nothing, like everything and nothing. It definitely represents certain, I think, unknown, like the unknown, but also it's a road, but you don't know where you're going on that road. Like it's an open-ended road. It was definitely also a source of livelihood for our family. My dad was a fisherman, and all my ancestors were fishermen for as long as we know, like fisher folk. My mom was she sold fish at the market. I grew up eating fish 3 times a day and other types of seafood, just because that was what we could get quite easily. So, and then of course we like loved it as well. But I didn't learn to swim until I was older, and we didn't have access to a pool, and the ocean's rather turbulent.
Right.
And once I had access to a pool as an adult, I was like, wow, this is so much easier to learn how to swim in a swimming pool. So it's also, it symbolizes also like danger or potential danger, as well as a potential source of livelihood or like an avenue to safety. I just but I do love this. I love the sea.
Yeah.
And I wish I could live in a house by the sea as well. Yeah.
And like you mentioned family too. I know that you have, like I just love your books, and this one, Clever Little Witch, it is a very witty and just funny book. I enjoy it so much. And so, like you mentioned, that one is some sibling rivalry happening in there. The most terrible kind of touches on that as well. So how what's your relationship with your siblings, and also how much were these books influenced by them?
Um, I, I, when I was growing up, I was very close friends with 6 of my siblings, and they were all boys, like one older brother and 5 younger brothers. And yeah, there was definitely a love-hate dynamic at times. Usually love, but sometimes hate, like sometimes like, that was wrong. They wronged me. Or, we played games that, bordered on, punishment.
Oh yeah,
Like
no,
we would, like sort of
I
daring
could
games,
relate.
or like games with balls. Yeah. So, um, and I wanted to, I wrote those 2 books partly like Clever Little Witch. I wrote it to sort of have a female protagonist that just didn't have to accept the arrival of a younger sibling, just because I felt like a lot of times, in picture books especially, you just have to accept the younger sibling and you don't have any agency over the situation. And in the end, everyone gets along really well. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to do a slight twist on that. And but yeah, I definitely wanted to capture the sibling relationship, because I have 8 siblings, and different relationships with each of my siblings. And there were times when we were really close, and times when we've been more distant. And yeah.
No, I appreciate it. I have my sisters, and I grew up with a lot of cousins, so it was definitely like having siblings. And there were those things, like times where sometimes you came home and your share of the food was gone. It's like, oh, got my because one of the other things that you mentioned in Wishes, particularly, you talk about immigration, you talk about wishing for a world, and I actually use these words you mentioned. I think it's, I wish only for a safer, kinder, fairer, and more beautiful world. I hope you join me in this wish. Together we can make it come true. And then you mentioned, say, when I hear about secret escapes and border crossings and family detentions and separations, about fear and loss, but also about hope and new beginnings, I can't help but think of my family's own story and wonder, how long and how often will this story be told? So that question in particular there, how long and how often will this story be told? What was your thinking behind that? Or what is the true gravitas of that statement?
Well, I think, we hear these stories in the news a lot, about, refugee and immigrant families, many of them forced to leave their homes, and they encounter various trials on their journeys, and sometimes they meet terrible fates. And even though my story happened almost, like my journey happened almost 40 years ago, it could very well fit in today, because we still hear these stories happening.
Right.
Like, we still hear about these stories, and like the UN actually estimates that there are about 80 million displaced persons around the world, and about 30 to 34 million are children below the age of 18. And they've been forcibly displaced from their homes, and that's a very significant number. And there are so many factors at play, like as an individual, sometimes I mean, not just sometimes, a lot of times I feel like there's not much that I can do, right? And but maybe collectively we can all do something more. And I know, you know, various people are in different positions to, you know, change things. But I hope that this book will at least open people's hearts more, so that at least we can be more open and kind and welcoming, even if we can't, you know, open our doors to everyone. At least the sentiment behind our actions is more beneficent, you know, like just more welcoming. And
yeah, no, I appreciate, you know, like, and I think just like Catherine is saying there too, like your honest reflection on this and just insightful. And because most of the times too, I feel like we'll talk about these stories, but from a distance, you know, it's like, oh, this is happening here, this is happening there, but you're saying, this has happened to me, this has happened to my family, this is something I've experienced. And so, like, because these things we usually think maybe, oh, it's historical. So to think that, you know, it happened in your lifetime and it's still happening, like how powerful this book is right now.
Yeah, and just, you know, sometimes, like, you know, every other week it could be a new area of the globe has suddenly, you know, like we saw that Haiti, you know, just had a dramatic event, and you know, people are being affected, and and the ordinary citizens, most of them, you know, they don't really have any control over these events. And so I hope that the book will help place readers in those shoes more easily, and that it'll serve as a bridge through the heart rather than something more intellectual, you know, that it'll be a bridge through the heart.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and just your books, and you know, the insight that you're bringing and the heart that you bring with this book too. Like we feel it, you know, like I wish that for the world. It definitely, I noticed too that this is more written from a certain angle where it's almost like it's the inanimate objects that are talking. So why was that thinking, or why is it the home that wishes it was closer than the person wishing the home was closer? So
I think part of the reason, I think there could be a couple of reasons. I haven't completely nailed down, you know, the exact reasons, but I think I did want to write a story that was as honest, you know, I wanted to write a story as honestly as I could, and I was a baby at the time, so I was both an actor in this story, but I was also a spectator because I didn't have a lot of agency. You know, it was really the adults were really driving the action in the story. So I think as a baby, I could kind of empathize with the position that the various objects are in, like the sun or the sea or the bag. You know, I was part of the story, but I really didn't have a lot of control. And I think also when you're reading that, the reader might be able to empathize with that as well. You know, sometimes we want to help, but we feel like there's not much that we can do, or we don't have a lot of control over things. And I think the other reason is just sometimes distance can help bring something closer. Like distance can actually bring it closer. I think the distance allows the reader, gives the reader space to form their own opinions. Whereas I think if the words were from a first person perspective, like I, then you're reading it, but what if you as the I don't really feel that way?
You know? No, that's no, that's so true. I definitely see that. Thanks for explaining that. No, it's so now I'm like, oh yeah.
but those are just some of the possible reasons. No,
it is beautifully written. And to think too, like when you mentioned that part about saying, you know, when you say, oh, the home wishes it was closer, like there's a part of me, like I've been away from Zambia. What's today? The 28th. Tomorrow, the 29th of July, I would have been in the US 10 years. And so, you know, like I try to go home as much as possible, but with the pandemic right now, I've not been able to travel. But it's just how time flies by and how many things are happening. When I left, my niece, one of my sister's kids, she was 6. Now
Mm-hmm.
she's 16. I'm like, when did this happen? I'm missing so much. So little things like that, like you're saying, distance, time,
Yeah.
that to make you realize just how much things are moving and what's
Yeah.
happening and what's going on. And it's just it is, you know, like these books, I don't know how much as you're writing for kids, but also how much you're writing for the adults, because it appeals to me, and I'm sure there are many others too that Catherine was mentioning too.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm writing for everyone, so
Right.
definitely for adults as well. I hope that so it makes me feel good that you're also enjoying and appreciating the book.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then Victor and I, before we go
Oh
to
yes.
just, you know, I think we have to mention how, and let's just before then too. Thank you, Miss Veda. Thank you. I know 10 years, 8 in the Bay, and 2 of those were in Baltimore. So, but Jen Veda, I'm particularly mentioning Jen Veda here too because she is the librarian at Emerson Elementary. And
Oh.
I don't know. I don't think she was there yet that year you came to mine. I can't remember because she usually facilitates authors and books happenings, anything books happening, anything reading at Emerson. So big up to you, Jen Beda. And I hope that you can connect hopefully for this coming school year.
I hope so.
Yeah. So, you know, like Victor, how was it working with them? And I just, you know, like I saw these illustrations, and is this their first book?
No, it's not Victor's first book. It may be Victor's second picture book, I think.
Okay.
But Victor is obviously an incredibly talented and
Yes, let me just put that.
amazing illustrator.
Right.
And I was truly fortunate and am truly fortunate to have worked with Victor on this book. Like, just these are some of the really incredible scenes that
it's amazing.
Victor
Well,
has.
even just the back cover, that cover that you showed.
Yes.
It's just like, how are all these? Yeah, there's just so much to marvel with this book.
Mm-hmm. There's if you think something was intentional in here, it probably was. Definitely with the art. And the art is like just so cinematic and yet so emotive at the same time. You know, this was one of the first images that I fell in love with during the sketch phase.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the primary subject here is the trees, and yet they're so alive.
Yeah.
Like they bring to mind, you know, to me some of Van Gogh's art, like just how in his art some of the inanimate objects and things like trees, they just come alive more than people sometimes.
No, it is. That's amazing.
And like the image with the sea and the sun, and Victor is also a very sensitive artist. So at one point, you know, I had been there was like some feedback where it was like perhaps I would want to change the narration style actually of the story to make it first person, and Victor helped me understand that the story as I written it was actually stronger and important. And so she helped me have faith in my own words.
Yeah.
So she's just an incredible artist, and also a generous one. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I noticed, and she mentioned something on Instagram, and just you just see that connection, like somebody who's ready to connect and just, you know, like really really share their work. So I love that. Thank you for that, and thank you for, you know, like talking about her too. Like, it's just was there a say in you in Victor being the illustrator for this book, or how did that happen, or did the publisher pick?
Well, sometimes the publisher, which, you know, the editorial team and the art team will sometimes pick without consulting an author. So I've had that happen a few times, but most of the time they will loop in the author.
Yeah.
And so VICTO was one of the artists whom the editor and the art director thought it was, that they thought she might be a good fit.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as familiar with VICTO's work originally, but I've learned to just really trust the editorial team.
Yeah.
And and they usually come up with and so I just trusted them, and she ended up just really surpassing my expectations, and really I don't think this book could have turned out this way without VICTO.
It is stunning. Like this page
Yeah.
that I'm holding up, this spread that I'm holding up right now is one of those where I looked at it and you feel the sadness, you feel the melancholy, you feel everything in there, like that was that I think that I was intending to put out, that moment of departing, knowing that we'll never see each other again, and like clearly some of you never even got to see your grandfather again, right? So it's just it's such beautiful illustrations. I love it, and thank you for sharing that with us, sharing your journey of writing, and like to just think, I'm honored really to have known you this long, and just even though we've not talked directly, it's been through email, but it's been nice to just still follow your journey, see what's happening. I think I have the other one too, which is, I think, is it +1 or 1?
Oh, 1 is a lot. Yes.
1 is a lot. Yeah. I have a copy here, but I couldn't retrieve it. So I was just like looking at all the different ones. Like, oh man, the only one I haven't gotten to yet is the one, I think the previous one.
If You Were Night.
If You Were Night, yes. Because the time I had gone to try and get it, it had said, I think it was pre-order at the time, and then just got lost in all the things happening.
I'll send you a copy. I'll send you a copy, Mr. Lamada.
But and then Catherine, I'm sure, was pointing to speaking to the point that you talked about writing from the inanimate objects point of view, and just I think she was saying a good point, and it is true. I like my brain is just like right now, it's like wide open on this. It's like, yes, I see it. And so just wanted to appreciate that as well. And then Harmony Beth, who's close by to us as well, she's in Alameda, says it's been such a treat having you here on Storytime, and thank you for sharing your gift and writing and your personal stories, because you definitely bring that touch. Oh yes, Catherine, thank you. And so you definitely have brought that personal touch, and like we see how truly connected you are to this story. And as an immigrant myself, and as somebody that really advocates for children reading, adults reading, and families reading together, and I think the little ones that we have on here, I hope that we continue to teach them, continue to learn, continue to expose them to these things. And I think this week we could not end with any better words than than what you said. I wish only for a safer, kinder, fairer, and more beautiful world. I hope you will join me in this wish. Together we can make it come true. I think you say that so beautifully, and I don't know anything else you'd want to add, anything else you'd want to share with everybody that is with us, and some of the people that may get to see it later. But before we end,
well, I mean, just thank you for having me on the show, and thank you to the kind words from everyone out there. I hope you enjoyed the story, and you'll share it with others, and hope everyone just hello to everyone all around the world.
Thank you. It is definitely a story worth sharing. So today we've been looking at wishes, and please find Muon Thi Van at muonthevan.com, and you find all information on there, all the books available on there. And the latest, of course, being Wishes, which we read today. And so just also a reminder that there will be no recording of this today. We'll try and put maybe just the interview up so everybody can still get to listen to this connection that Muon Thi Van makes with a very special book. And just find it where you find books. Go to your libraries, ask for this book, find it at your schools, and let's definitely share it. Important stories. I think, like I said, it's one community. Let's make sure that we're learning about each other, understanding each other. Yes, we might not fully understand, fully grasp what people are going through, but we can try. We can take those steps to definitely, steps to learn about others and try and just empathize and hopefully we have a better world out there. Thank you so much for joining me on Story Time today. My guest today has been the wonderful Muon Thi Van, joined us today, and of course the author of the new book, Wishes. Thank you, Muon. I'll see you in a bit. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed that wonderful discussion that we had. Yes, you can tell the connection that Muon Thi Van has to her work, and especially these wishes too. You can see just where it comes from, right from the heart. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Muon Thi Van. Please find her on Twitter and also find her on her website, and continue to enjoy her books and involve them in your classrooms, in your homeschooling situations, whatever you do. Find ways in which you can connect and use these books. Thank you so much for being here on Story Time. I am so glad that we're able to spend this time together. Happy Wednesday, and it's just wonderful. I have to read these words one more time. Join Muon Thi Van, and she says, I wish only for a safer, kinder, fairer, and more beautiful world. I hope you will join me in this wish. Together, we can make it come true. Together, we can. Thank you so much for joining me on Story Time. Hugs and kisses from me as always. And I will see you again tomorrow when I'm back. And we're talking another important event in U.S. history. And this one is the 9/11 edition of 30,000 Stitches. So do join me for that one. And my guest tomorrow, Amanda Davis, and we'll be talking more about that. Thank you so much for being here on Storytime today. I appreciate each and every one of you. And yes, indeed, Catherine, that's what we need to do. Keep trying. We'll keep trying, keep working at it. It is an ongoing process. Like the shirt says, let's do the work. It is ongoing. We keep working, the work for justice, the work for equal pay, the work for fairness keeps going. We have to play our part. Thank you so much for joining me on Storytime today. Much love to you. I will see you again tomorrow. Please do find books, read, and enjoy them. Love you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
He brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely. Won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be in. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely. Won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be in.